And we're on. What? No.
No this.
No.
And no.
No. Grand.
We're all done with that.
Welcome back to the English couple.
Hello.
Hello. So the last couple of these have been going really well, haven't
Yeah.
they? We've had lots of
I think so.
feedback,
We've been doing all
and people seem to have enjoyed it, which is astonishing, really, seeing as it's you and me just nabbering.
It's little old you, little old me.
We haven't changed the background or any of that yet. We're hoping to, but it might take a week to do that because I need to do it when I'm not so busy.
Not busy, but you are hell for leather at the minute, aren't
Yeah,
you?
hell for leather.
Hell for leather.
Which is not what we're going to be talking about in this episode.
Or lel for heather.
Lel for heather.
I do like a good spoonerism.
You do.
I do.
I've seen you spooning many times with your isms. Anyway,
Yes.
So what is it? Blending lives
Blending lives.
is
yes.
what we're calling this. Blending lives. And this is the process in coupling, because we are a new couple, as you know.
As you know.
As you know. And we're sort of going to be... Well, the aim is to blend lives, and we, as you will have seen in the previous one, we were talking about our fantasy shopping for a house to moving into. Are you all right?
I need to shuffle over a bit. Sorry about that.
Shovel over.
Shuffle
a
over
little
and
bit.
interrupt the flow. Sorry about
That's
that.
it. No, that's perfectly fine. I'm warming my hands on the coffee. I don't know why. It's not actually cold in the studio.
No.
So yes, we get aiming to, the idea in a fantasy world or in a dream world,
ideal world.
in an ideal world even, is that we would find a lovely place with a little bit of land and a few outbuildings and
It meets enough of our needs that we can
yeah.
make something work.
It's probably everybody's dream, and everybody's got to have a fantasy, and you've got to have something to aim for.
Yeah.
If you have nothing to aim for, what's the point? You might.
Everybody's journey to get there is different.
Yes, and I know some people, want to pour cold water on ideas, but I just think you've got to have something to aim for. You may not get there, but if you aim high and you get a little bit lower, it doesn't matter. But if you just aim low and never
You'll never get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the plan, but this is where we blend lives. Now, I'm been a bachelor for a long time. I've had a girlfriend of some duration.
Yes, because even in your previous relationship, you were pretty much just two single people, but met up.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, because when I was married, obviously we all lived here, then we separated, then got divorced, and then I had a long-distance relationship with a lady called Harriet, who lived in Shrewsbury. And I would travel up to 230-something miles to see her every other weekend, which was a huge commitment. She would come down occasionally, but it made more sense because my son Billy was living here and he had his girlfriend here, and it's a 2 up, 2 down, and it's quite busy. And she had... it was a slightly bigger house, and she was on her own. So I would go up and then just stay... and over a weekend. But I used to find that a week, as much as I really liked Harriet and everything, and this is not derogatory or a knockback, I would find after a weekend with only a bag full of stuff, I was ready to go home and wanted my space again. And so blending lives, it could potentially, excuse me, itchy nose always when you're filming,
Waka, waka.
is a problem. Now you're in a relationship that you're slowly moving away from.
Well, yeah, I'm still very heavily connected to my previous relationship, being in that we've not been able to move past the getting out the house. So I've not really had my own space for quite some time. And actually having the caravan over the summer, that really highlighted, it reminded me what it's like to have my own space, something that I call my own. Because although when you get married and you share that space and, you can have your own space within that space, but I lost that somewhere along the way.
Yes, and I think if you're in a relationship that's not ideal at the moment and you're trying to break off from that relationship and you just can't pack your bags, and go.
I mean, there's so many complications.
And as I'm sure loads of people who've had marriages that have broken down, and, that's what happens in this world. We do occasionally get these slightly baffling comments that say, well, what about poor husband?
Mr. Lovely.
Yes,
Yeah,
and things like that. Well, obviously there's two sides to any story, but if one person is just not happy in a relationship and the other person's not that bothered about that, it sort of breaks down. And it's obviously better if both people can be happy in other relationships or in no relationships, whatever they want. But when you're in that situation and you have not got your own space, I think that's difficult. And I think, as a stepping stone, Now, I'm not saying this is what we are going to do, but I do think that if you've been in a relationship, I can imagine it must be nice, like you said with the caravan, to have somewhere that, like your own house or flat or apartment, whatever, for a duration, so that you sort of go, now I understand, it's like, and now I've got somewhere, a bolt hole, and if I don't want anyone to come round, or I want to have a party, or I want to play my music up loud, or I want to do anything, you can, that freedom. And of course I have that at the moment. I can just shut the door and say, I'm not answering the phone, I'm not opening the door to anybody, and I can just sit there. And I don't have parties or anything like that, but I'll sit there and read of an evening, and I just love that peace and quiet. And so blending...
I'll earn that peace and quiet one day when my kids are grown.
Well, that's right, they will grow up.
Moved away and don't need me anymore.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah, they grow up, they go the other side of the world, or they have their own family, and you do feel like, hang on a minute, I did all this for you, and they've gone off. But it's, I was the same. I was the same with my parents,
and it will come around again.
Yeah,
when their kids have grown, and
we all go through it. It's not.
It's part of the cycle of life, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But yeah, blending lives.
So some of the worries or concerns that I think I might have, and I'm sure other people have experienced or do that, is how do you, if you've been on your own for quite some time, especially if you're older, you get very set in your ways, and you might not want to, we have an age difference. You have a different taste of music to me, or a different television programs that you might want to watch. I don't want to watch any television. I can't bear the tinny noise of telly in the background. It drives me mad. And those sort of things, you think, that might get on my nerves.
Yeah.
So blending lives, obviously there is give and take, but maybe what one needs is that's why we're talking about a relatively largish property with space or outbuildings, so that you can actually take yourself out of it.
I mean, fortunately, between us, we have assets that we can,
pull together,
and it does give us some options. So, but it is just that careful balance of finding enough of what we need in a place to be able to have the space from each other when necessary.
See, the thing about when I was with Harriet, I mean, there was the distance, which was that was a pain.
That's always a dampen on a
relationship. The distance was hugely tricky, because you couldn't, I had to go for a weekend or several days to make it worthwhile. You couldn't just pop over for a meal and then go home again. Yeah. And I did say to her, I said, because she said, oh, well, you could move in. Excuse me. And I said, well, the thing is, you look after your house in one way, and I look after my house in another way, and we're very different like that. Plus, I would always know it's your house. And even in the 10-year relationship I had, and I would go up and she would just treat it as your own, I would still say to her, do you mind if I have a bath? I wouldn't just assume. I was still...
You wouldn't be like, oh, I'm just going to have a bath.
I'm not going to have a... Yeah.
Do you mind if I have a bath?
Yeah, I would ask. I'd always ask permission.
It's very much the same for me here, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's... I don't know...
And you've had a lot of time here in this house, and you've got a lot of history here.
Yes. And it would always... And I know if somebody moved in here, whomever it was, I would always, apart from my own kids... I mean, the thing about Billy and his girlfriend when they lived here... Billy was born in the house.
Yeah.
So in a way, he has a right to the house, even though he hasn't paid the mortgage. But he paid rent. And so that was different. But if somebody else moved in, I would always be aware, it is my house. And I'm sure they would be aware. So you've got to try and buy a house together so that...
Well, it would become neutral ground, wouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah. But the thing that, you wouldn't want to get into a situation where you just find that while you're in a relationship and you don't live together, it's magical, that when you do, somehow the magic disappears. Either you start taking each other for granted, or, and I'm not saying these are things that will happen, I'm just saying these things do happen. They do happen.
There's a risk of them happening,
Or that you irritate one another to the point that you can't live together. And when Harriet had said to me, you could move in, I said, well, what I would do is buy a house in the same road, because then you still had that sort of, you're not quite living together, but either could sleep over either place. You could say, oh, why don't you come over to mine and I'll cook a meal tonight? You could run your kitchen how you want to run the kitchen and cook the meal how you want to cook the meal without someone going in, oh, no, I do it like this. No, we do it like this. And no, I bought this rather than this product. And there's all those sort of things. And I don't know what I am like because I do things in a very peculiar way. I'm a very peculiar, self-centered person. By the fact that you live on your own, you become self-centered and it's stuck in your ways.
Set in your ways, yeah.
Yes.
Like I said. Mm.
And you know, I think you can, but some people perhaps are open and let, you know, other people just do things. But I like doing things.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I mean, I've not been in a long-term relationship where we didn't ultimately eventually move in together. Mm. Whether or not that was part of the reason the relationships failed or not is, you know, you'll never know. But to me, that having two separate houses just isn't an end goal, you know. I don't know.
No, I wasn't suggesting that
No,
that's what we
I know.
do, but
I know,
I'm just suggesting there was a program.
There are plenty of people who do.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching another YouTube channel, Tiny Houses or Tiny Homes, and there was a couple who had two tiny homes in a mobile home park in America, a trailer park, as they'd say. And they had two tiny homes next to each other. They had the neutral space in the middle. They usually stayed at her house and cooked in her house, but he had his man pad next door.
Yes.
And they could stay over there. They had different, assets in each house.
And in a way, if you had a big enough house, you could effectively do that. You could,
have a wing each.
Like a wing each, and then the middle bit you go. The ballroom is our mutual place, and of course, the other thing is, of course, one partner might have children. Or both of you, and we're talking about ourselves, but also talking about other people. So you do have children, but in another couple's, they might have a son and a daughter, and the other person might just have two sons or just one daughter or whatever. And then the dynamic of adding children or dependents into that mix is another thing which makes it very difficult, because you and I can get on really well, but I don't have Joe 24/7.
Yeah.
And I've had children, they've grown up, and I don't have Elijah 24/7, obviously.
That's right.
And
so I'd need space to be able to raise my kids where you can come and be a part of it, but if you don't, if you
exactly,
you can get away.
I mean, and that's the thing, because I wouldn't be their father, and I couldn't.
No, you'd only ever be their stepdad if that was the case.
And also, I brought my children up very differently to how you brought your children up, because it was a different era. And things are different, kids have phones. My kids didn't have phones until they were in their late teens. They didn't spend that all time watching television, because we didn't have that sort of wall-to-wall. They did watch a lot of VHSs, I will grant them that. A lot of Postman Pat and Thomas the Tank Engine, I seem to remember, and Pingu, that's the thing. But it wasn't wall-to-wall, and the televisions were not the size that televisions are now.
No, and the annoying thing is that because there's so many more different ways that you can get screen time and all of that, and mobile phones are that much more accessible now, that if you and it's in a way it's a much more dangerous world as well. I think.
Well, you have got connection to the internet, and all sorts of things can pop up.
So the only reason my 11-year-old, almost 12-year-old, has got a phone is because I'd gotten to the point, I was always saying, oh, you're not going to have a phone till you're 15 at least, because I was 18 when I, maybe even 19 when I first got one, and that was a borrowed one from my mum.
Right.
But you're not going to get one till you're 15. His 11th birthday comes around, I'm thinking that's at least half a dozen, if not more times, and I've wished he had a phone this year to phone him and find out how he is, where he is, what he's doing.
Well, of course, and one being worried about where your children are at such a young age, even at 10 or 11. I mean, it is you don't want to put a tracker on them.
No.
So that Rocky's walking into town, he's just gone into Woolies.
But that's the funny thing, you can put a tracker on. There are apps where you can track their phones and stuff. That's what you said, isn't it?
Well, that's effectively, effectively what it is.
But the thing is, I mean, you can cut your children off from all this screen time and not allow them to experience all of that. But then you're going to be cutting them off from their own little society and their peers, because, like me, when I had a completely different set of viewing and games and stuff in Saudi, when I moved back, there was very little that I could talk to people about and befriend people about.
And having a shared... it's that whole business about traditions and customs in a small
sharing culture.
Sharing culture. And if your culture happens to be whatever's on TikTok or YouTube or that kind of thing, that is an important thing, because it gives you a talking point. It might be a subject in that video that then you have a chat about and you're exploring, because it's a shared thing, and that's very important. So we brought up children differently, and I don't know at this moment in time quite how I would cope, with children around me all the time, because I don't have that now, and I've got very used to if I want to just sit down and read a book, I can. I mean, in between doing all the work.
Yes. Just to point out, Joe starts school next year.
Yeah, no, I'm not knocking. I'm trying. We're using our
this
personal.
Isn't so personal, but yes.
I'm using our personal circumstances to debate the wider point that this, so that because people probably aren't that interested in what we do, the minutiae. Thank you.
That's all right.
Of what we do. But by using our situation as an example, then I'm sure that we can elicit a wider debate when people go, oh, actually, yeah, we had that same issue. We got over it this way, or we didn't get over it, or we lived like this.
The comments on the previous chat video we did were really interesting. Some people had some
Absolutely.
really interesting experiences and points of view.
Yeah,
So that was nice.
And this is where I think the comments, if they're civil and sensible,
Have value.
More
value, rather.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it is interesting to hear how other people's age differences didn't matter, and the sort of examples that people gave. Thank you very much.
The occasional did matter.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you to our super chats as well that came in. We appreciate that very much. And of course, all the support for the channel goes without saying, although we have just said it. But so blending lives it's
a complicated matter.
It's a very complicated matter.
It takes a lot of thought and consideration.
And it's one of those things that take our example again. If we were to rush in and buy if we were to buy a big place together, and then compound that by being miles away from family and friends, you're sort of really testing the mettle, because if it goes wrong, what do you do?
Yeah, there's no going back, because you've amalgamated all your assets to get where you are.
And that's,
not to be taken lightly.
No.
And quite frankly, to free up the assets anyway is going to take time. So
So I think...
Meanwhile, the rug of time is just seeing our lives go... It's like, oh.
It's true, and that's why you've got... I say to Julia many times, like when we're out in our camping trips and things, or... we're staying over in a nice Airbnb or anything that we're doing, is we have to think of now and not sort of just get through that moment. Now we're living it now, because
cherish it
while you've got it, because those now moments go so quickly.
Absolutely.
And if you're all, and of course the other thing is, if you're always looking to the future, I think you're not experiencing what you've got now, and what we have now is also fantastic. I know it's not so great for you living at home with your ex.
It's a
but you have
strange
that
juxtaposition
escape
of having two separate lives almost.
Yes.
It's
And one thing that Julia, I hope don't mind me saying, is that you can consider my place as a
sanctuary.
A sanctuary.
Absolutely. Yes, I don't mind you saying.
If only it's just like an hour away from the kids, and we all need. Not saying that the kids are bad. Or anything.
No.
It's just everybody needs
It's easy as
a bosom to lie on. Is that the word? Everyone needs a pillow for a bosom.
Everybody needs a bosom for a pillow.
That's it.
Everybody needs a bosom.
Is that so? That's what. Presumably, that just means we all need a little area where we can go and just go.
Yeah, bolt hole is another word.
And that's what your caravan was a bit like.
Absolutely, and that was great, particularly because I had my mum and dad right there.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's only so much help they could give. But I didn't want to impose that much on them.
No, but
which is why having the caravan rather than just being in the house with them, was so good.
Yes, because your parents have been brilliant and said you can just come and rock up at the house. But of course, then you're rocking up with two children, and Joe's very young, and there's a lot that your parents then have to put up with. So by having the caravan on the drive meant that you could take the kids away, so they're not hassling the parents too much, your parents, their grandparents, but they still had the garden, which was safe. It wasn't like the caravan was just in a random field where anybody could come and nab them. So it was, and you had the washing and water and all of that and food, and so it was. We
were taken care of.
Yeah, so it was almost like a second home.
Absolutely.
And that's very nice, particularly in your circumstances where your ex is still around. And so that's why it kind of comes back almost full circle to me saying it's like in a way I feel like having somewhere permanent for a short time that's yours, so you get used to the paying the bills and the responsibilities of things.
I've done all that.
I know you have. I know. I'm not saying you haven't.
Did that in my 20s. Yeah. I had lodgers and everything.
Yeah, well, brilliant.
I had to collect the money off them and take it to the bank. I got mobbed actually and robbed when I was taking the cash to the bank.
Mobbed
once.
And robbed.
Well, whatever you'd call it.
Yeah, really? Were you?
Yeah.
Gosh.
Like mob, that's multiple people, is it? No, it was one guy. I was
One
counting
guy.
up the money within the bank.
Mugged?
Yeah. He dashed it. It was in Portsmouth, in Lloyd's Bank. It was quite
Blimey.
scary.
Yeah,
I thought he
I bet
was
it
my
was.
mate at first. He just, put his hand on my money, looked me in the eye, and I was like, haha, thinking it was my friend. And then it was like, it's not my friend. And then he went, whoosh, and off he ran.
In the bank?
From the bank, yeah.
And did the bank witness it?
Well, there was cameras and everything. I don't think they ever caught the guy, but the bank very, very generously put the money in my account because obviously by that point they knew how much money I would be taking and paying cash in.
Gosh, how
and it was that
extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean you can be as careful as you want, and and a place can think it's as secure as possible, but no, they made changes.
Yes.
That was scary.
I know, absolutely.
So I've been there and I've done that.
Yes.
But no, I do understand what you mean because I've been in that relationship and that for so long. But it's
it was just that fact that you said that having the bolt hole of the caravan
That's
to
right,
be able to take the kids and just do what you want, it's your place.
Yeah.
Is a great thing.
Yeah.
And I'm
But
just
that-
thinking
yeah.
our relationship to get to the house might take a lot longer.
Yeah.
Because you've got to sell
I'm
yours.
not. I'm not adverse to the idea of having somewhere else, but if it would delay the getting to the ultimate ideal,
Yes.
then I don't feel that would be a good idea.
No, well, anyway,
But,
it's
a work in progress.
It's work in progress and it's ongoing chat. So blending lives is not easy, and making these decisions. I think when you're young, you're more impetuous.
Yeah,
and
you're more willing to just
Yes.
throw caution to the wind.
Exactly, because you haven't got the baggage, you haven't got the maturity of life, and you haven't seen how things can go wrong. And
That's not to degrade those people.
No, not at
young
all. I
people,
mean, we're all.
because
I'm sure we've
through
all
that
done
age,
it, of course, and you're braver and all that. And I think as you get older, you are.
have more inhibitions, maybe, and
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I just think that you're a little bit more worldly wise, and you think you haven't got that long, and it's a big thing moving, and if you can't
especially
blend.
when you've lived somewhere for 30 plus years.
Yes, exactly. Even more. I
So
mean, I
much of
never
your
thought
life
I would
here.
actually want to leave this lovely house, because it's such a huge thing, a huge undertaking to do. And I just think I'm a bit stuck in the mud, and it would have to be absolutely spot on right. Otherwise, I know I would be a pain to live with. Anyway, so be interested your thoughts on blending lives. Have you done it? Did you try it? Did it work? Did it not work? Let us know in the comments. Only positive ones, please. Keep your negative rubbish to yourself. You'll only get deleted and sent into
Life's
the
too
sin
short
bin.
for negativity, please.
So there you go. Blending lives. What do you reckon? We will do.
What are your experiences? What are your thoughts?
We'll do another one of these fairly soon. But from us, from here in the old studio,
Tatty bye.
goodbye.